My name is Emily. I am 28 years old, and my hands were literally shaking as I stood in the cold, sterile break room of my corporate office, staring down into the dark abyss of a filthy plastic trash can. I had just done the unthinkable. I had just taken the crumpled brown paper bag that my exhausted father had woken up at 5 a.m. to pack for me, and I threw it away like garbage. It was a pathetic $2 lunch, a cheap bologna sandwich with a bruised apple, and I was so blinded by my stupid pride and the fear of being judged by my wealthy coworkers that I tossed it without a second thought. But the exact moment the bag hit the bottom of the bin, a suffocating wave of guilt crashed into my chest. Trembling, I reached my hand deep into the foul-smelling trash, pulling that crushed bag back out, ignoring the disgust of the people watching me. I opened it, intending to just eat the sandwich in shame, but my eyes fell on something hidden at the bottom. There were 3 small folded pieces of notebook paper inside. As I unfolded the first one, my heart dropped into my stomach, and the words written in his shaky handwriting broke me in ways I never knew were possible, revealing a secret that would completely destroy the fake life I was trying to build. But before I tell you exactly what those 3 little notes said and how they completely shattered my entire world that day, I need to take a quick pause. I really love knowing how far these personal stories are traveling. So please tell me in the comments right now, what city and state are you listening to this from? I read every single comment, and it brings me so much joy to connect with you. Now, let me take you back to the very beginning, so you can truly understand why I ended up crying on the floor of a corporate bathroom, holding a bruised apple. To fully understand my horrific mistake, you have to understand my dad, Arthur. He is a 60-year-old man with hands rough from decades of physical labor and a heart softer than anyone I have ever known. My mother passed away when I was a little girl, leaving him to raise me entirely on his own. We never had money. We lived in a tiny, drafty apartment on the wrong side of the tracks. My dad worked as a warehouse loader, breaking his back lifting heavy crates for 12 hours a day just to make sure I had decent clothes and warm food. He never complained. Whenever I asked if he was tired, he would flash a warm smile and tell me that seeing me grow up was all the energy he ever needed. But things had gotten exceptionally bad recently. The warehouse shut down unexpectedly, leaving him unemployed. He finally managed to get a part-time job as a night janitor at a local high school, paying minimum wage. We were drowning in bills, eating cheap rice and beans for dinner, and the immense stress was carving deep lines into his aging face. He was sacrificing his own health and well-being every single night just to keep a roof over my head, and I was too absorbed in my own world to truly appreciate the magnitude of his daily sacrifice. Meanwhile, I had just landed my golden ticket out of poverty. I was hired as a junior marketing executive at a highly prestigious downtown firm.
It was a massive leap, but the culture shock was paralyzing. Everyone at this firm came from old money. They drove luxury cars and wore tailored suits. I felt like an absolute fraud walking through those glass doors every morning, terrified someone would realize I didn't belong. My only saving grace was my coworker and best friend, Sarah. She is a 29-year-old woman who started at the firm a few months before I did, and she was the only one who didn't look at me like I was an alien. Sarah came from a humble family and understood the brutal struggle of trying to survive in a workplace filled with corporate sharks. We would often hide in the corner of the break room, whispering about how ridiculous the company culture was. Sarah was my safe space, the only person I could truly vent to when the suffocating pressure felt like it was going to crush my skull. Sarah would bring me extra packets of instant oatmeal she kept hidden in her bottom desk drawer, knowing I often skipped breakfast to save money for gas. But then there was the ultimate antagonist of my daily life, Jessica. Jessica is a 30-year-old senior account manager who made it her personal mission to remind everyone where they stood on the social ladder. She casually dropped the price of her international vacations into conversations and complained about finding good domestic help. From the moment I walked into that office, Jessica hated me. She constantly made passive-aggressive comments about my cheap clothes, but her favorite target was my lunch.
Every day, the senior staff ordered delivery from expensive bistros, $20 vegan salads, $30 sushi rolls. I couldn't afford that, so I brought my lunch from home. Knowing how stressed I was, my dad insisted on making my lunch every morning. At 5 a.m., after a grueling night of scrubbing floors, he would take 2 slices of the cheapest white bread, slap on a single slice of bologna, and folded it into a brown paper bag. The entire lunch cost less than $2. He would hand it to me with a proud smile. I loved him for it, but when I brought that greasy bag into the sleek break room, I felt a humiliating shame. The contrast between his pure love and the superficial world I was desperately trying to navigate was a constant, painful war inside my mind. Jessica made absolutely sure that shame grew into a massive monster. She would walk by my desk, look down at my paper bag, and wrinkle her nose. "Oh, Emily," she said one day, loudly enough for the whole floor to hear, "are you eating that highly processed meat again? Those cheap preservatives will absolutely ruin your complexion. You should treat yourself at the organic place across the street, unless you can't afford it." I felt my face burn with a fiery heat. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. I forced a fake laugh, but inside, my soul was dying. I vented to Sarah about it later. "I can't take it anymore, Sarah," I whispered fiercely. "I need to fit in." Sarah looked at me with deep sympathy. "Emily, who cares what Jessica thinks? Your dad makes that for you out of pure love." Logically, I knew Sarah was right, but the crushing pressure of the corporate environment was a slow poison. I was so desperate to escape poverty that I started viewing my dad's lunches not as acts of love, but as heavy anchors dragging me back down. I started hiding my lunch like contraband, eating it in my car or the stairwell. I was becoming a master of deception, meticulously hiding my true background from everyone except Sarah, terrified that the truth would somehow ruin my career prospects. Then came the fateful day that changed everything. I had a massive career-defining presentation scheduled for the afternoon, my first time pitching to a major client. I was a shaking ball of pure anxiety. That morning, I woke up late and rushed into the kitchen, frantically trying to fix my hair. My dad was standing by the counter, looking much more tired than usual. He had dark purple bags under his eyes, but as soon as he saw me, he forced a bright smile and held out the familiar brown paper bag. "Here you go, sweetheart," he said, his voice hoarse from working all night. "Big day today. I packed you something extra special. Go knock them dead." I barely even looked at him. I snatched the bag roughly from his hand, immensely irritated by the slight delay. "Thanks, Dad," I muttered dismissively, practically running out the front door. I didn't see the look on his face. I was far too consumed by my own selfish panic. I was practically hyperventilating as I drove to the office, rehearsing my opening lines out loud while aggressively gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned completely white. I arrived at the office in a total frenzy. By the time noon rolled around, my stomach was roaring, but I was way too stressed to eat. I walked into the break room to grab a quick glass of ice water, clutching my dad's brown bag. But my personal nightmare, Jessica, was there. She was holding a crystal bowl of exotic salad, chatting animatedly with 2 senior partners. As soon as I walked in, her sharp eyes locked onto the Gracie bag. A cruel smile spread across her face. "Well, look who it is," Jessica announced, ensuring the partners heard every word. "Getting ready for a Michelin star meal, Emily? What is the special today? Canned tuna or mystery meat?" The senior partners chuckled politely. In that exact fraction of a second, something fragile inside my brain snapped completely. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was pure, unadulterated panic. I felt like a massive imposter unmasked before the people holding my future. The entire room seemed to suddenly go dead silent, and I could feel the intense heat of a dozen pairs of judging eyes burning a hole directly through my cheap blazer. My hands were trembling with a toxic mixture of rage and profound embarrassment. I looked down at the bag. It looked so cheap, so undeniably poor. All my deepest insecurities boiled over. I didn't want them to see me as the poor girl from the wrong side of the tracks anymore. "Actually, Jessica," I said,
my voice shaking slightly, but loud enough for everyone to clearly hear. I lost my appetite. This is just garbage anyway. And without a single ounce of hesitation, I walked straight over to the large plastic trash can, lifted the heavy lid, and dropped my dad's lovingly prepared lunch right into the garbage.
I literally threw away the very thing my exhausted father had made for me just to impress wealthy snobs who didn't even care if I lived or died. Jessica smirked. "Smart choice," she said. I turned around and walked briskly out of the break room, pretending I had just won a major social victory. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribs that I thought it might actually break through my chest, but I forced my face to remain completely stoic and unbothered. But the exact moment I crossed into the empty hallway, the adrenaline vanished, leaving behind a cold, horrifying emptiness that chilled me to the bone. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to press my forehead against the wall to keep from collapsing. What kind of monster had I become? My mind flashed vividly back to my dad's tired face that morning. He had stood in that freezing kitchen, his hands physically aching, putting together the absolute best he could afford, and I had just treated it like toxic waste. The realization of my own disgusting cruelty was physically painful. I spun around and sprinted aggressively back into the break room.
Jessica and the partners were still there, but I didn't care. I marched straight to the trash can, plunged my bare hand deep into the bin, and pushed past dirty coffee cups. My fingers brushed against the brown paper, and I yanked it out like a lifeline. I ran out and threw myself into the nearest private bathroom, locking the door behind me. I sank to the cold tile floor, gasping for air as hot tears blurred my vision. With violently trembling hands, I gently opened the top of the bag. The smell of the cheap bologna and yellow mustard instantly filled the small bathroom stall, a scent that used to mean comfort, but now only brought me pure agony. Inside, the sad little sandwich was slightly squished, but as I reached in, my fingers brushed against something else entirely. Thin, torn pieces of lined notebook paper. I pulled them out carefully. There were 3 small, neatly folded squares. My dad had never put a note in my lunch before. My foot pounded a frantic rhythm as I unfolded the first piece. The handwriting was incredibly shaky, a clear sign of his tired hands.
It read, "Emily, my sweet girl, I know things are incredibly hard right now, and I see how much intense pressure you put on yourself. But I just wanted to remind you today that I am so unspeakably proud of the brilliant woman you are becoming. You belong in rooms I could never even dream of entering. Go show them what you are made of." A loud, ugly sob ripped from my throat. He knew the crushing pressure I was under, and his only instinct was to lift me up. I desperately unfolded the second note. It read, "I know bologna isn't your favorite. I skipped dinner entirely last night so I could afford to buy those little cheddar cheese crackers you always left so much. They are hidden safely at the bottom of the bag. You need the energy today far more than an old man needs a meal. Eat up, kiddo." I frantically dug to the bottom. There was a tiny bag of crackers. To buy them, my father had gone to bed physically starving. He had willingly suffered painful hunger just to give me a tiny moment of joy. I held that tiny plastic bag of crackers to my chest as if it were made of solid gold, realizing the profound depth of his sacrifice. The emotional pain in my chest was absolute, unendurable agony. I had maliciously thrown away food that my father had literally starved himself to buy. I was a selfish, arrogant monster. It took me several long minutes to gather enough physical strength to open the third and final note. My hands were shaking violently. It read, "I know I haven't been able to give you the easy life you deserve. I know I don't have money to leave you, but I promise you this, Emily. For as long as I have breath in my lungs, I will always be your absolutely biggest fan and your safest place to land. Don't let anyone in that fancy office make you feel small. You have a heart of pure gold. I love you to the moon and back. Love, Dad." Those final words completely shattered my defense mechanisms. If he had only seen what his precious girl with a heart of gold had done 5 minutes ago. I sat on that bathroom floor, weeping until there were absolutely no tears left.
All the grand illusions of the corporate world evaporated instantly. The luxury cars and expensive salads were worthless garbage compared to the unconditional love of the man sitting in our freezing apartment. I was already the wealthiest person in that building, and I had almost thrown my priceless wealth away. I had allowed the toxic, superficial culture of a soulless corporation to completely blind me to the only thing in this world that actually mattered. I didn't care about my completely ruined makeup or my swollen eyes. I washed my face, packed the squished sandwich, the crackers, and the 3 notes incredibly carefully into my bag, and walked out a completely different woman. I marched straight back into the break room. Jessica was still there. I walked right up to her, looking her dead in the eyes with a cold certainty. "Jessica," I said, my voice incredibly steady and loud enough for everyone to hear. "My father is a janitor. He works graveyard shifts scrubbing dirty high school toilets so he can afford to buy me a $2 lunch.
And that cheap bologna sandwich has more value, genuine love, and profound dignity in a single bite than you will ever experience in your entire miserable, superficial life. Don't you ever speak to me about my lunches again." The silence in the room was deafening. Jessica's jaw practically hit the marble floor. I didn't wait for a response. I turned sharply on my heel, grabbed my laptop, and told my manager I had an extreme family emergency. I had somewhere much more important to be. As I walked out of those glass doors, I didn't feel an ounce of fear or regret about my job. I only felt an overwhelming, desperate need to see my father. I drove home like an absolute maniac. I forcefully burst through the door of our tiny apartment. My dad was deeply asleep on the worn-out couch, completely exhausted from his brutal night shift. The loud sound startled him awake. He sat up quickly, looking panicked. "Emily, what's wrong? Did you get fired?" he asked rapidly, his voice thick with worry.
I dropped heavily to my knees right in front of the couch, threw my arms tightly around his waist, and buried my face deep in his chest, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry, Dad," I wailed. He was completely bewildered, but his immediate instinct was to protect me. He wrapped his rough arms around my shaking shoulders. "Shh, it's okay, baby. I've got you," he whispered. When I finally calmed down, I told him absolutely everything. I told him about Jessica, the crushing pressure, and my blinding pride. And then, forcing myself to maintain eye contact, I confessed exactly what I had done to his lunch. I told him how I cruelly threw it away. I watched the sudden flash of hurt cross his face, a sharp shadow of deep pain that I had maliciously caused, and it destroyed my heart. I had taken the most beautiful, selfless act of love and treated it with absolute contempt, and watching him process that betrayal was the worst punishment imaginable. But before he could pull away, I pulled the 3 notes and the bag of crackers out of my pocket. I showed him that I had desperately dug them out of the trash. "Dad, you are my ultimate hero," I said, my voice cracking. "I don't care about the money or the fancy food. I only care about you. Please forgive me for being so incredibly blind." My father looked down at the tear-stained notes, and slowly, thick tears welled up in his own tired eyes. He didn't yell. He just reached out, wiped a stray tear from my cheek, and pulled me into the tightest hug of my entire life. "There is nothing to forgive, my sweet girl," he whispered, his voice choking. "We all lose our way sometimes. I'm just glad you found your way back home." We sat on that old couch for hours, sharing those 50-cent cheddar cheese crackers, and it was the greatest feast I have ever had. I went back to work the very next day and crushed the presentation. And from that day forward, I sat proudly in the exact center of that break room, eating my cheap bologna sandwich with the biggest smile on my face. Jessica never said another word to me.
That fateful day taught me the most agonizing but ultimately vital lesson of my entire existence.
We spend so much of our short lives desperately chasing the validation of people who absolutely do not matter, that we blindly throw away the priceless treasures sitting right in front of us. True wealth isn't found in a massive bank account or a designer suit. It is found in the shaky, trembling handwriting of a tired father who skipped a meal just to see you smile. Have you ever let the crushing fear of judgment make you hide or reject the people who truly love you? Don't wait until it's sitting at the bottom of the trash can to finally realize its immeasurable worth. Until the next story,